you lose weight first in your head, then off your body. Now, we're so fixated on providing physical exercise, the physical elements, we're trying to solve a lot of mental health problems through physical well-being. Well, actually, that doesn't really make much sense when you think about it. Go to the source, i.e. mental health and well-being, and then the physical stuff gets taken care of. But we kind of do it the wrong way around. Now, I think if you were really looking at the data of what people, why they're coming, and then why they're leaving, you'll discover a lot of that is true.
Hi, I'm Lauren Parsons.
And I'm Andy Jackson, and this is the ALWELLCO Podcast.
Dive deep with us as leading experts share their unique perspectives on topics such as recovery, sleep, movement, and the latest innovations in the space.
Mr. Nic Jarvis, it is a pleasure to see you, mate. How are you?
Good to see you. Yeah, I'm very good, thanks.
Yeah, it's great to get you on the ALWELLCO Podcast. Now, obviously, you and I have known each other like a couple of weeks, but for others and our audience, etc., before we dive into, all about you, tell us how you connected, how you got into ALWELLCO, just tell us a bit of history of how we connected.
Well, that couple of weeks, that's been decades now. So really, it's funny enough, I was at the chiropractor this morning and I saw some boots in the locker, shoe lockers, a Vivo. And one of the people coming out, I said, "Oh, you wear Vivo?" And she actually picked up from a visit a long time ago that I made there, and she saw my shoes and she wondered about them. She just picked it up from there.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is. But that's the nature of our relationship, really, hasn't it? It's been networking over the years from way, way back. So I kind of just follow what you do, where you go. I look at what you do. I look at who you're associated with. And it's just continued from there. Sometimes we work very closely on things, and other times it's very much as it is now at a distance, and I'm just watching what's going on. I love the fact, you're bringing a community of people together, like-minded people coming together on something, and offering them lots of different elements that could help their businesses and their freedom of choice of what they can do or don't do. So I think that's a great way of doing it. But the real steer from your point of view, Andy, is you're a networker, as I am. And I think that's really the connection of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's, I was trying to think, it's probably 30 odd years, isn't it?
It probably is. I thought about when I joined the industry 40 years ago. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's a long, I actually went back in October to, would you believe it, the YMCA's 40th anniversary of training and development. I mean, incredible stuff. So
it's weird, isn't it? It doesn't feel like it. It feels like yesterday.
Well, obviously, we want to hear all about you and what you're up to and etc. So in simple terms, for our listeners who don't know who Nic Jarvis is, who are you? Where are you from? What should people know about your background?
I've given my age away already. I studied physical education. You did too, didn't you? I studied physical education.
They called it Human Movement Studies in Durham. Very posh.
I did. Exeter, we were physical education. I decided not to teach. I probably wasn't there to learn to teach, actually. I was there to play sports. But I then went into the health and fitness industry. It was a very immature young organization set up, and I joined the hotel industry because that's really, in the UK, the health and fitness industry started predominantly in hotels, brought over from hotel chains from the States. So I started there as an instructor, became a manager of a small hotel health and fitness club. Then I went into a small chain of clubs, independent chain. Well, they were all independent then. And so I did that. I became the GM of 5 clubs based predominantly around London. Then I moved from there into the wellness industry from the corporate point of view. So we were running contracts in companies. And that gave me a different insight, really, behind health and fitness. And I had a lot of connections then to the States, where because of the insurance situation in the States versus the UK, companies were doing an awful lot more for their employees, and they were much, much more holistic and broad-minded than than the health and fitness industry in the UK. The health and fitness industry in the UK was very physically orientated. I would say it still is today, actually, and that's 30 odd years on. Whereas the corporate health and well-being sector was much, much more holistic, much broader, and that's where I began to look from the perspective of we're missing something in what we're offering, and that took me into the behaviour change side of things. The company I was involved in got sold. As is often the case, you get promised shares, they never delivered. So I went off on my own, and I joined my father-in-law, who was a management leadership trainer. And I joined him, and that really connected back up to my teaching. But also I'd had a great mentor for 14 years, and he'd focused me on developing leadership management training. So I really got into that with Alan. And then I went on my own. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And then I had an approach from a company in Scandinavia who had heard about what I was doing and my connections with the health and fitness industry. And my background was NLP. I'd done tons and tons of NLP since my early 30s. That was the behavior change area I was working in. And they had this weight loss program, and they wanted me to bring that into the UK as the master franchise. I was very resistant, predominantly because I'd worked on my own for many years. I didn't want to get involved in a company again, but they persuaded me, funnily enough, through the money, the potential of the money. So I went and did that, and did it really badly, predominantly because I didn't really have a heart in it. It was a great program, but what it meant, it took me about 2 years to set up. And then actually, as soon as I started doing it, I wanted to get out of it, go back on my own. But of course, I'd lost all my clients at this stage. So I was looking around to see what I was going to do. And I then had my attention drawn to network marketing and Herbalife. And I thought, well, I'd seen this before several times. I liked the idea of it, but I'd never really put my heart into that. So I wondered what that would be like. I experimented, did that, and really that boomed. And today, that's what I do a lot of. Well, I can't say I do a lot of it anymore because the group's so big that I'm kind of playing around with it. I do bits of it that I like, the behavior change element. So that's really where I am up to date.
Yeah. And you've spent over 30 years in the fitness industry specifically. I'd love to hear from you the key changes that you've seen throughout your journey in the industry and maybe why they mattered. What's changed over time and what's kind of been super big and milestone specific, or just what have you noticed?
The good and the bad.
Yeah.
The good.
I've got out of my lycra. That's the good.
The scope of offering is so much bigger now than it ever was. So we're attracting a much wider base. I'm not ever sure whether it's driven by the health and fitness industry or the cultures of the countries becoming more aware of health and therefore going to the health and fitness industry. I'm never quite convinced how well the health and fitness industry itself drives the changes in the marketplace. My feeling is that there are probably disruptors that are from outside coming in, looking and changing things. So the offering is much, much broader now than it's ever been, and we're attracting a much wider audience, which is great. The thing as well, the development of equipment is phenomenal. What we can do there with people is great. And of course, and Andy does, we precede personal training. You had gym instructors. So the personal training side of it coming in was revolutionary. That wasn't really an evolutionary move. It was slightly different in the States, but for the UK, we just didn't have that. So when we began to see it at IRSA and conventions like that, we went, wow, this is something very different. So that was a huge shift. My view on that is, unfortunately, I don't think that's really developed in the way that it could have developed, and it could develop into the future. I think we're missing some opportunities because of the restriction on, and I've got to be careful what I say here, but the commercial operators they have a certain agenda that drives their business model. And I don't necessarily think that is innovation. I think it's the disruptors coming from outside that disrupt things, and then the operators have to catch up with that, if you like, rather than them instigating the changes themselves. And so although equipment has moved, technology has obviously moved, we've got more sophisticated than that, there's still an awful lot that doesn't happen. I can remember being at meetings of the mines in Colorado, and certain things being suggested there. But I got up on stage. The area I was talking about was leadership, and I posed the question to these operators of the chains of clubs: this is a simple question. Do you know what your members come for? And do you know how many of your members actually achieve or are achieving what they came for, what they set out for? Now, I know something. They don't know. They didn't know the answer to that then, and I don't think they'll know the answer today. Mm-hmm. So how many industries do you know who know so little about what their customers really want? The data, the information we have available, and the systems we have available, that's not, to me, I don't think that's there. And so say someone joins a club now, you should be able to track and offer a whole series of things for them based upon where they're at in their journey. And I don't see any of that. I still visit quite a lot of clubs.
Nick, there's all sorts of, I'm not going to name any of them, but there's all sorts of companies who are saying they're doing that they're using technology to get that type of information, etc. So you saying that they're collecting the data, but they're not necessarily acting upon the data, and certainly not asking the customer. So they're showing them the data. I can see what's happening, but we're not actually then linking that to the goal of why the person first came. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, 100%. If I go on now, for example, if I go onto one of the buying sites, whatever one I'm using, Amazon, whatever, there's an algorithm built in there that is telling me, the books, Audibles, for example, it's coming up. I'm getting emails all the time about what's right for me. Well, really are our members of the clubs getting that kind of information? Do the operators truly know and profile that person to be able to say what they can offer them? And then, has the churn of the members really dropped? And do they know why people are really leaving? So they come in and they might fill in a form and that data is collected, but are they really looking at what happens on that journey and what happens at the end of the journey and why someone's truly leaving? We're at the time of the year now where throngs of people join the clubs. And what is it? I remember one study, one of the building societies did a study, insurance companies did a study, and by March, something like this is years ago, 350 million had been wasted by customers joining clubs and then disappearing, and they're gone by then. Yeah. Has things really changed now?
Yeah.
So in 30 years, you're saying that problem was there 30 years ago and nobody's really fixed it well.
Yeah. Yeah. And given everything that we're seeing in other types of industries, that's not really happening. That information is not, we're not sophisticated enough with our customers looking at those kind of things. And it goes back to the thing that you remember me harping on about, that we're focusing on. I work a lot with weight loss at the moment, and I say to people, look, you lose weight first in your head, then off your body. Now, we're so fixated on providing physical exercise, the physical elements. We're trying to solve a lot of mental health problems through physical well-being. Well, actually, that doesn't really make much sense when you think about it. Go to the source, i.e. mental health and well-being, and then the physical stuff gets taken care of. But we kind of do it the wrong way around. Now, I think if you were really looking at the data of why they're coming and then why they're leaving, you'll discover a lot of that is true. So, for example, so someone comes in, I can remember this years ago with motivational counseling when I looked at that, the questionnaires and stuff. there's a whole series of questions on there, but it starts off with like, what are you coming for? I want to get fit. What does that mean? Well, I don't really know. I just want to get fit. And then you go, okay, well, so translate that. Well, I want to lose weight. Okay. And it kind of stops there. Well, actually, the real questions are, why do you want to lose weight? Well, when you keep stepping up that, you discover it's always for their health and well-being. It's mental health and well-being. Okay, so as an industry, that's what we really should be focusing on. Are we helping people lose weight in such a way that their health and well-being changes? Well, the problem is when someone goes on a weight loss program who doesn't really understand why they're doing it, they actually, at some point in time on that journey, will question, am I getting what I want? But they haven't really been made aware at the outset of what they really want. So the answer is often no, and they drop out of the program.
Yeah, interesting.
But when you connect it all up, we have this, the technologies out there to do it, things I think will be very different. It's like PTs. I used to say to PT, we had this conversation. I got into the commercial side with PTs, how to make money, and because they weren't making enough money. And I actually, said part of the problem is it's the operators that are not paying them enough. And of course, that's what the PT said. And then over time, I began to realize, actually, you know what? Is it really? Or is it the PTs are not providing enough value to the customers and therefore the operators in order to earn more money?
Yeah, they can't charge more.
I won't say the chain, but I remember I did a piece of work, a big piece of work with PTs with one of the big chains in London. And what was interesting is when we researched it, and this was the accountants that came back and the HR actually, they came back and they said, look, we've seen the growth in the PT revenue, and that's excellent. But we have a problem. The success you're having with the PTs has no impact on the churn of members. And I went, that's interesting, because that wasn't part of my brief. My brief was to increase revenue. Yeah. And they said, well, no, the thing from our perspective is if we can keep members 1 month longer, it blows away PT revenue completely. We're not interested in that. So why don't you focus on that? And I went, okay, I'll have a look at that. So I did some research into it. What I discovered was the PTs who had grown the revenue had focused on the top 20% of health club members. But those weren't the people that were going to leave. Yeah. But of course, the PTs connected most with those people because they were like those people. The churn came from the middle 60%. And I went, guys, why aren't you working with the 60%ers? And it's easy pickings to go with the top 20, so the 6%. And I said, what's the problem? It's weight loss. They're interested in weight loss. Said, great, that's such an opportunity. Well, no, not really, because we can help them with the exercise side of the equation. We can't help them with the nutrition side. Well, why don't you try? Well, it's complicated. It goes on outside the gym, et cetera, et cetera. And so they didn't bother with that. And to this day, I'm not really convinced that they do. But the data is there if they look and go, this is where we should be focusing with our clients. This is what we should be providing if we want an impact on the churn.
Yeah. So let's connect the dots a little bit, because I like what you said before about, either one, we're not asking the right questions, or maybe two, the folks that we're asking the questions to don't know their answers.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Why they're coming, why they're there. And then the piece about the PTs, the personal trainers. Do you think that dynamic is still true with personal trainers? They're not earning enough, but maybe they're not providing enough value or the right value? And then two, how can they make that change? So is it asking better questions? Is it getting into the core of why they're really there? I mean, how can we flip this around?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this actually connects up with my world in network marketing, because to me, the majority of the PTs are employees and they operate with that mindset. Now, that's not surprising, because culturally, our education systems are about that. providing education in order for people to go and work for somebody else. Our education systems in the West were built around the Industrial Revolution, and we haven't really changed it. We're still about get a job and conform. Now, network marketing, of course, is very different from that. And people say, well, so many people fail in network marketing. Well, they fail because they actually, when they come in with a dependency mindset. So if you're familiar with Stephen Covey, who wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about the stages of maturation: dependency to independence, the adolescent to interdependence. Now, if the majority of the population have got the dependent mentality either employed, the PTs come in with an employed mentality. So what they deliver is what they're told to deliver, and they look for the operators to tell me what to do, and I'll do it. Whereas what I think needs to shift across the culture, is a more independent and ultimately interdependent mentality where the PTs become more entrepreneurial in what they do. And as a consequence, they're looking at their customers going, okay, my focus is this person getting what they want out of this? Or am I just providing a program because I'm told to provide the program in this way? Am I just signing people up to do PT for the sake of signing up for PT? How much? So, this is really easy questions, which I've asked them as well. How many of your customers are getting the results that they want? Well, I don't know if it is surprising. How many have a blank face? Because they're not sure. They might ask them in the consultations at the beginning, but are they following them up? Just like the whole of the industry, I don't think does. So the thing for me is helping people, and this is a mindset change. So it's about helping them change from being an employed, dependent mentality to being somebody who's more self-employed, or even a leader, where they shift to independence to interdependence. So that's a cultural change within the dynamics of the working environment.
And you're talking mainly about gym chains, right?
Yeah, but I am, but I'm also talking, yes, predominantly, but I'm also concerned about freelance trainers who make a small income, a survivable income, as opposed to a thriving income. And they get their qualification and they go into and it's classically. So this is something that's a bone of contention to me. It's counterintuitive to a lot of people, but going back, when Andy was talking about classes, movement and stuff. So an aerobics teacher, as we called them then, would try and fill a class. We'd get 40, 50 people in the class and job done. We got the numbers. As long as we can keep doing that, we're doing well. Now, PTs have very similar mindset because the culture is very similar. I got to get to 40 clients or whatever it is, the number. But the thing is that's not entrepreneurial. That's a limited mindset. I'm going to fill up the number I can cope with, and I've done a good job. Now, an entrepreneurial mindset is I'm going to bring in people, get them to this place where they become independent of me. They're not looking for me for motivation, etc. They go out into the marketplace and tell other people. They don't have to stick with me for 3 or 4 years. Those people come to me, but the original one comes back to me for expertise in my programming, etc. So sees me every 12 weeks or whatever it is, just for the reprogramming and check where I am. But they don't see me as the motivator. Now, what happens is you then begin to grow your customer base to a much, much larger scale of people. But you're actually helping people so that they're not linked to you, dependent upon you. They understand how to motivate themselves to exercise. Because at the end of the day, we want people thinking for themselves. We want them to be conscious. And this is the biggest thing to me culturally, shift in mindset. People talking about mental health and well-being. Consciousness is the key to that. And so this is part of that for me. So you develop this entrepreneurial flair. And so what happens is you are actually creating these people coming in. Your revenues, your profit changes dramatically because you've got different layers and different types of clients. But you're doing classic referral marketing, network marketing, you're networking. And therefore your promotion costs, etc., you don't need those kind of things because your referrals are coming in. But referrals are based upon the value and success you're providing a client that's locked into you for years after years. Can you imagine being in a changing room and someone says, I use Nick as a PT. Oh, yeah, how long have you been working with him for? 4 years. What? I don't want to sign up for 4 years. That's frightening. Now, of course, there is a market right at the top that are very happy to sign up for that and see them 3 times a week. But that's not the majority of people. The majority of people, that they need the separation.
Yeah, it's interesting, Nick, is that so I've been going to some neurofeedback training. You wouldn't be surprised to know that I've landed on my head a few times, and I've got a few issues. I got diagnosed with focal epilepsy, and it was interesting. I was with the person yesterday, and she said to me at the end of it, "We're getting near the end of this protocol to meet the particular goal that we're aiming for. We're going to start you on a new protocol." And I'm like, "Okay, that's great." But she didn't then say, "Here's the results that you were getting at the start. Here's the results you're now getting. So this shows you how you've improved." And my main aim is memory, is what I'm trying to fix. Short-term memory is what I'm trying to achieve and do. And that's exactly what you're saying. I'm going through the protocol. I believe in it. I trust them. It's very interesting. I definitely feel more focused after the training, etc. But I want to see the long-term benefits. And Lauren and I had a chat about it because Lauren's doing it as well. And we're saying, well, once it gets to 2 months or 3 months, if they're not actually showing us the results. So I know the goal of why I'm there. Okay, so I've at least achieved that. They know the goal of why I'm there, but now show it to me. Because then exactly what I asked the question already. So once you do this and this, I get the results and my numbers improve, how often do I need to come back just to maintain it? Which is what you're just saying.
Yeah.
Interesting, Nick. So you've built this unique methodology. So let's not dive straight into Herbalife right now, but can you just tell a little bit people about and explain your methodology? I want you, as you do this, you mentioned the term NLP. A lot of people might not know what NLP is, so pull this into the conversation. So how do you apply your methodology? Who can benefit from it? Tell us a bit about who you're working with today, how you're adapting these principles, for today's world.
I would never call it a methodology. It's an approach, and it's an approach that came originally from the leadership management training stuff I was doing. So when I started with that, I was doing it in all areas, all aspects of management development, and quite quickly I made the connection that actually I wanted to focus on leadership and particularly how do you get people to do things better? How do you maximize productivity of individual people? And so I began to focus much, much more on behavior change. The first person I ever came across with this actually was a guy called Louis Tice. I don't imagine Louis around because this is a long time ago. It was Seattle University, I think. And he was the first person that actually triggered in my mind that I didn't have to be the way I am. I could change. Prior to that, and I did educational psychology, I never really understood that you could change. I thought, you fix your personality, that's it, you're doomed. Louis opened my mind up to know you can be different. You learn to be the way you are, therefore you can unlearn it and become different. And then that took me into the field of NLP and neuro-linguistic programming. And I worked with the kind of like the second generation of NLP. There were 2 founders, and I worked with them. And then I worked on my own, did my own stuff with that. And it became at the heart of what I did, particularly around communication skills training and coaching, that kind of stuff. The techniques of NLP, which many people might be familiar with now, that I didn't really get those. I was much more into how you communicate with people, how you coach, and how you influence people, which is the area that I went into. And first of all, that was from a management point of view. Then I started working just by coincidence with personal trainers on coaching skills. And that's really laid at the heart of everything that I do. So from a methodology point of view, I've already touched on it a bit, that this I was at a conference in New Orleans, a corporate health and wellness convention, and there was a guy there. This is going back way. Probably won't even pronounce his name properly. I'd probably never had pronounced his name properly. Jay Kimichek, and I have in my head he was at Ohio University, but he might not have been. And Jay did some research into the health and fitness industry, and in the research, they identified only one difference between habitual exercises and non-habitual exercises, the yo-yo exercises. And interestingly, he repeated this in a small presentation at an URSA presentation a year later. And what he said was that the one thing, they'd looked at all the criteria, the one thing that stood out was the habitual exercises had an internal locus of motivation. The non-habitual exercises had an external locus of motivation. When he presented this in a 45-minute presentation at URSA, I was watching all the audience. And it just struck me that they didn't get what he was saying. Now, I'd seen him for 2 days in New Orleans. This was in San Francisco now. And then afterwards, I spoke to some of my friends who'd been in the audience. What did you get out of that? Not one of them said that. And this, to me, was so fundamental because, of course, the health and fitness industry at the time was providing all external motivation. Even a PT is an external motivator to the individual. So the thing for me was, what we have to do if we want long-term behavior change is to help them, teach them to gain internal locus of motivation for exercise. But that applies to anything. Any habit change must become internal because you can never rely on external sources. So as a coach, as an executive coach, I can make my money. And I remember working with a colleague on this. We used to have clients that kept coming back to us. Something seemed to be fixed, and then they would come back again for something else. And Colin and I having this conversation, and Colin said to me, "Do you think there's something wrong with this?" And I went, "Yeah, there's something hugely wrong with this. We're making money out of the same people because we're not fixing the underlying cause. What we're dealing with is the symptoms. We have to go and discover what's this cause that's underneath." Now, in NLP, there's loads of techniques to fix this or fix that. But actually, we still weren't dealing with the underlying cause. So for me, again, I wouldn't use methodology. The whole thing that drives me is how do you help somebody make sustainable change so that they achieve the things they want by changing their behaviors and learning that it comes from within, not from outside. And so I went into that kind of field. And, over the last, I don't know how long years, probably 10 years now, a lot of it, what I use as a tool to teach it is the 3 principles by a guy called Sid Banks, because it's the easiest thing. It's broader than that of what I do, or slightly different, but it's easier. I can say, read this person's book, read this, or watch this, or such and such. It's easier for me to do it that way. But my programs that I run, the behavior change programs, are all around helping people discover for themselves that how they can bring about the sustainable change and not need me or any coach to do that. They use those people for expertise and knowledge on certain fields. It might be nutrition, for example. You might need some. The thing about weight loss, I used to say this to the PTs, it used to really upset them, but at the end of the day, if someone exercises 3 times a week, does a bit of strength training, a bit of aerobic exercise, cardiovascular exercise, and actually they look at the amount they're eating, and they look at certain things like alcohol and processed foods and sweets, they're going to lose weight. There's nothing ingenious about it. As much as people will make the programs, it's the behavior change. That's the critical thing. Get that right, then everything follows from there. So that's really the approach. Does that make sense?
That's the approach. I will use the word approach and not methodology, Nick.
Yeah.
It's no problem. Hey, just changing slightly. So I've personally benefited from some online physical therapy or physio for the UK. And I follow various methodologies, and I am self-motivated. So if someone gives me the exercises, I religiously follow them, etc. I've got that. Back to our sports day, the coach told us what to do. You repeat it, you know how to do it. Yeah, I've seen, let's call it some older school people in our industry who are still saying the industry won't survive unless one-to-one interaction remains the essential part of what is happening. So what are your thoughts on the online versus one-to-one coaching? Is personal training still a strong business opportunities for clubs, trainers, and organizations?
I think it's a great question. I don't think there's a black or white answer to it. The best way I can explain that from my perspective, because there's a place for both, is the easiest way of looking at it. But way back in the day when these kind of tools were beginning to emerge, I had colleagues, management training friends who kept saying to me, "You need to go online, Nick. You need to put things online. You need to do your calls online. You save your travel time. You do all of those kind of things." And I kept saying, "Nah, I'm a feeling kind of person. I need to be connected with people." And I didn't really understand it that much. But then certain things came out. And then, of course, it was much more economical for me to do that. And so I did it and I used it. And of course, during the pandemic, it was a great time because that's all we had.
Yeah.
And it appeared that that's what was going to happen and we were going to move to that. Well, post it, I went and ran some workshops. And I can guarantee 100% the impact of those workshops far outweighed anything I did online. Human beings are meant to be connected. And therefore, face-to-face is, to me, the most powerful tool.
Yeah.
Now, economically, logistically, that might not be possible. So therefore, you have to have alternatives. And online, to me, are great alternatives. But if you went for the ultimate, then belly to belly is the way that we operate as human beings. We can even, Andy, you've heard me talk about this. We can even sense. So when you get an energy from somebody, if you're near them, you feel that energy. If someone's pissed off with life, you feel an energy. You can look at them and you see the signs, but you feel the energy. If somebody's buzzing about something, you feel their energy, but that energy is coming off them. That's how sophisticated the human body is. It's not just the skin, etc., that we're in. There's an energy going around us, and you feel that.
Mm-hmm.
So Nick, let's just pull all this together then. If you then take the premise of what you've been saying about it's actually about behavioral change, that person's got to make that change. They've got to know what their goals are. They're doing it. Can that be done online?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just it's the ultimate layer. The ultimate is face to face. But yeah, you can bring about change online.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about Herbalife now. We mentioned it a couple times. And before we get into it, multi-level marketing, that's in the US, it's kind of a bad taste in the mouth, pyramid scheme. Can you walk us through the multi-level marketing approach, upsides, downsides, skills needed, and then we'll get into Herbalife a little bit, but just your thoughts on it.
So I first saw it. I was presented it a number of times years and years ago, and I looked at it and I think here's an interesting model. It's a model where individuals can create extraordinary businesses, income-wise sized businesses. And I thought, well, I'll investigate it. I investigated it and I went, yeah, there is something here. I'm not sure what it is. You have to find the right company that fits for you, etc. But I like the idea of it. And if you took away, and I'll talk about why it's got such a bad rap, but if you took away that and you look at the basic formula, it's happening in all industries. Here's the thing. I recommend this person buys. Oh, they're going to reward me in some kind of way for that person buying. That's the notion of network marketing. And so to me, it's phenomenal. Then people go, well, it's a pyramid. Well, actually, every business that's hierarchical is a pyramid. So there's complete utter nonsense about that. Yeah. And then they go, well, the people that got in the early days are the people that earn and no one else earns. Completely nonsensical. I brought someone into my business who now earns twice Her business is twice my size. She's what we call downline from it. So all the things about it have been. It's gone through. It's a young industry formula, and they made lots of mistakes, including Herbalife, and that's had to be rectified. So the biggest downside for me is when what they call a marketing plan, which is how you earn, is not designed to ensure product gets into the marketplace. So what I mean by that is when I first looked at it, and take Herbalife as an example, you could buy bulk order and get a higher percentage qualification, be higher up the marketing plan. But the person that buys the bulk order might not necessarily know what to do with that. And so they preloaded a whole load of product. So product appears to have been sold, but actually it's not actually in the marketplace. And this was up to about 15 years ago in Herbalife when they then changed the marketing plans. Well, no, you cannot do that. Product must get into the market plan, place. Now, the issue for most people in it is most of the customers in a network marketing business are actually sign up to it. So they're both the same. They're the distributor and customer. And that's the difficulty for me, a lot of that. There's not customers out there, genuine customers out there. Whereas again, we have those. We have to have the genuine customers, because if the distributor is also the customer, you're encouraged to bring in a whole load of people, and it doesn't work that way. The other thing is, there's a line that they use. It's a way for an ordinary person to create an extraordinary income, and I think you have to put a caveat around that. It goes back to what I was talking about with Stephen Covey. The majority of people that are going to sign up to a network marketing business have a dependent type mentality. I come from an employed background, and what network marketers often do is they present this idea that doesn't matter. But actually, if someone's conditioned to be employed, they then go into a network marketing business where they're actually independent. They will get training, but hey, they're independent. So you get plugged into the system, and then you're supposed to, another term I hear, it brings out individuals' entrepreneurial flair. Well, most people haven't got it because it's been conditioned out of them. So that doesn't work that way. So you have to be able to put people's expectations. You have to get that right. You then have to explain the different levels, not just in a marketing plan, but in normal common sense terms, what you're likely to achieve with the mindset and skill set you have now. And this is how it then changes. And then you work people through it. I think it's an absolutely phenomenal business model. I've obviously seen success with it, but I have to say it took me 10 years in Herbalife to look at it. I didn't have to do Herbalife. I was looking at it. I was testing stuff. I was trial and error with it until we came up with the first model I came up with, which was a one-to-one type model based around personal trainers, actually. It worked initially and then didn't work. And I didn't understand why it didn't work until I looked very closely at how network marketing works. And I went, I can see the flaw in that. And the model we have today is very different from that.
So if a struggling trainer came to you, how would you apply your model today, or Herbalife in general? How would that support them, or how could you support them? How do you change them around?
Well, if it's a PT, then I would attach it that they're one-to-one training. So for me, that I attach it to that, and they do it very much. They don't really do the network marketing element to it, to be perfectly honest. They do the customer element to it. They take the products, they make a retail profit from the products, a gross profit from the products. That's how I would do it with most PTs. That's not how I do it, though, with people that want to really do Herbalife on a big scale. Because what we discovered was that if you do things one-to-one, you can provide a high level of service, but actually because of the margins on the products, you get, one of the terms I use with some of my people is you provide a 5-star service, 2-star income. you spend a lot of time following up people, chasing them around. The returns aren't worth it. So it's got to be attached to what you're doing, an add-on product. But for anyone who's not a physical therapist, a PT or anything like that, that doesn't work. If it's your sole income, that model doesn't work. What we kind of accidentally discovered from other countries in the world is that we have this model we call breakfast clubs. So people come together in small communities, in clubs, and they actually have their breakfast, and they then learn about nutrition. They learn about those kind of things, and then off they go. And they come in, it's open 5-6 days a week, very early in the morning, close at 11, boom. Model's really simple. But what I didn't understand, they worked, and I couldn't quite fathom why they worked so well. But when you look, it's really obvious. They're in communities of like-minded people facing the same obstacles with the same kind of goal. So what happened, and we didn't mean this to happen, we discovered that actually the customers coached each other, which was much more effective than the coaches coaching the customers. Because it's like, I remember Paul Bedford doing a piece of research in retention in the UK into the health club industry. And he discovered that if someone had a problem, they would speak to people in the changing rooms, members of the club in the changing room, more than they would go and see a professional fitness person. Well, the same thing applied here, because the coaches maybe had been in the same position as the customers at some point, but now were fit and healthy, etc. But the other customers around having their breakfast wasn't. So the way that I talk about it now is that we human beings predominantly learn and develop and grow through insights. And I use this as an example. So when you're stressed and anxious, you're all over the place. You're not going to have any insights from that perspective. But when your mind settles down and you become quiet, actually your innate intelligence comes flooding through. So in terms of the level of behavior change, I talk about innate well-being. You know, our ancestors had it. We've got it. We've got to the place we are today in our lives. We all talk about learning and schools and stuff like that. Now we've got an incredible, phenomenal, innate well-being intelligence within us. And when a group of people come together, and maybe some of them are anxious, but they actually meet other people, like-minded people with them, their mind settles down. They open their mind up to seeing things that they didn't see before. They change. They don't even know they're changing. But it's that community linked together that creates it. So that's really how we do it today. And it's working so powerfully. So let's go to the one thing that I remember someone, when I started doing this from the health and fitness industry, posted on social media, Nic Jarvis has sold his soul.
Really?
And, yeah.
Wow.
That's amazing. And the thing that they said to me about is meal replacements. And that comes up all the time. And I said, they said, Nic, but people should eat well. They should eat properly. And I said, I agree with you completely. How many of your customers actually eat properly? Honestly, how many people do you know eat properly? Well, yeah, but they should eat properly. Yeah, I agree with you. But on the journey to eating properly, they're going to have a lot of, you tell them what they should be eating. They're overloaded. They go to the supermarket. They got to buy different things. They're confused about it. It tastes different. It cooks different. This is all that. Okay, so what's the solution? Well, just give them what they need in nutrients and it's easy to make. And then when they get into the position to have some clarity, they'll make better decisions. But you got to help them win first. You got to engage where they're at. That's what meal replacements do. You know, high quality nutrition, easy to do, get it packed into them. Then as they grow and develop their mindset towards this, I can choose that. Yeah, you can. Yeah. Not all the time. You don't have to all the time. Try it. Don't have the shake today. Do that. See what happens. It's a tool. It's only a tool. You know, sometimes I hear people say the magic's in the products. No, the magic is in the people using the product as a tool. That's where the magic lies. And that comes down to engagement and connection. Whether it's in network marketing, whether it's a PT therapist, the more engaged you are and connected to someone, the more you understand them, the better results you'll achieve. And I think this is why my group are now doing phenomenal. By the way, Andy, you said to me on something, number one in the UK. I'm nowhere near number one. I've got people that in my group that are far bigger than me. That's important, because people say, you can't. You come in, the person at the top's going. Well, no, I've got an ex-gym manager from Liverpool. I won't tell you what she earns. Her business is twice my size. And I brought her into the business.
Good
Someone
for
else brought her into the business. And it's phenomenal. I've got several people like that.
Yeah, good for her.
And it's great. From my perspective, it's all about lifestyle. So I'm very happy that they're working that hard.
Yeah. Well, no, it's interesting, because you get to a stage whereby, you want to build a business which isn't all about you, and that's certainly where I am in my career in terms of doing. I still like the day-to-day grind. But as we get towards the end of this podcast, Nic, is that fitness is changing. I call you a bit of a fitness guru, whether you like it or not. AI is around, technological innovations are here. What do you see happening in the next few years?
I think it's really interesting. I saw this a few years ago, and then it didn't happen. I thought it was going to happen, and it didn't happen. And it relates to the mindset stuff. So technology, I've got two sons, 30 and 35, and they embrace all of this kind of thing much more than I do. But they communicate it with me, both of them exercise, etc. So they communicate it with me, and I've used some of the tools and things. And then I've gone, okay, so what are you actually using that for? Oh, it gives me all this information, etc. I said, great, yeah, but so what? What difference does it really, really make? And part of me goes, a lot of the technology has been sold because it's a sexy thing to have, know, etc., etc. So I think what's going to happen is people will keep looking and go, okay, going back to what we originally talked about about the health and fitness industry, what is the impact here this is really making on someone? And then they'll begin to look behind the mindset element of it, because to me, mindset drives it all. Now, so what do I mean? Well, you get data on the various smartphones, whatever we have, but it's all relatively in the past. And you go, okay, so what's the lessons from that? Now, that obviously can work to an extent. But actually, when you really get into mindset is in the moment. The past's gone. That last second's gone, doesn't exist. The future does not exist. The only thing that exists is now. And the thing for me, when we're talking particularly about, so anxiety's become a big issue. By the way, it's always been there. But now what happens is people are recognizing it and talking about it. But that anxiety, those feelings that people are having, are the best friend they can ever imagine having. Because that anxiety is telling them one thing and only one thing. You're in your head making up a ton of stories in the future or guilt from the past or whatever. The one place you are not is here. Now, I teach this to my people, and I say feelings tell you one thing and only one thing. Are you in your head or in your heart? When heart, I mean the innate intelligence that's seeping through us. Which one are you in? If you're in your head, that's happening. If you're in your heart, this settles down. So what I want when I tested my last one out is when I get angry, say, or when I get sad or whatever, I want this thing to go beep. I want it to measure this and go, your feelings, Nic, you're gone in your head. What does that mean? I know what this means. Okay. Now, I might not be able to do anything immediately about it, but that's the feedback mechanism that happens immediately, because that's the most powerful feedback that anybody can have. We don't understand what our feelings are truly telling us. They tell us one thing. We're in a conditioning or we're not. That's it. Now, when we have the technology that connects up to that, because the people running the technology understand more about mindset, then things change. I've just recently looked at someone asked me to look at an app, very well-known app around weight loss, provides tons of information, doesn't get anywhere close to that.
Interesting. Yeah. Fascinating. You know, it's interesting. We had Dave Phillips from TPI, Phil Mickelson's coach, on one of the things he said, Andy, when you're playing golf for 5 hours, I don't care about your 5 hours. I only care about the 2 seconds before you're about to hit the ball. You need a focus. It needs to be about your mindset at that particular time. So I don't care about the 5 hours. That's literally, and I think that's what you're saying, is get in that moment to do that.
It's just that one moment.
Yeah, it's that's one moment. Yeah. So basically what you're saying is that technology will hopefully get there with mindset. I love that idea.
Yeah.
But it would just say, hey, what just happened?
It also uncomplicates so many things when you really think about it, right? We
Absolutely.
complicate a lot of things. We tend to think that we need something specific for this, this issue, this piece of technology, this, it's like, no, scrap it all.
Yeah.
And actually, are you present? What's going on? And let's get you back to that, because it's the only thing that actually really exists.
That's right. And then from that place there, you'll make incredible decisions. And so this is the other thing about the industry, the health and fitness industry, the club side of it. It's helping people when they come in. That's the thing. Like, so for example, everyone says, "Oh, exercise, the endorphins get going. I feel much better when I come out." But they go back into the workplace often, and I'm talking often about some of the London places I work. They go back into the workplace half an hour later. They're as stressed as they were before they went.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand, actually, let's bring this all down. Not let's rev it all up again. Let's bring it all down and teach them mentally what is going on. And they don't do that. And that's the bit that's missing.
Yeah.
Well, Nic, this has been fascinating as always. And it's a pleasure to have had you on here, mate. One of the core values of this podcast is we're all about strength, kindness, and perspective, but particularly about kindness. We like to get you to give someone a shout out, someone who's influenced your career, someone who's inspired your journey. Just give someone a shout out to show an act of kindness.
There's lots of people that have
you
done
can say
that.
a few. There's no.
Well, you have as well. You've been a great friend through my journey. I don't know if you want people that are close or people. That there are people in the world that I work in now. That Jamie Smart, for example, who's a mentor of mine, who wrote the books Clarity and Results. Is phenomenal. Michael Neal, the Outside In Revolution. These people I've trained with now. They're
awesome.
Michael Neal, the Inside Out Revolution, phenomenal. These kind of Dr. Amy Johnson, these people, they are looking at life in a very different way, and it comes from this place of kindness and of putting. It's about helping people see for themselves the good in themselves. It's everything starts from that place. You can't make as big a contribution as you can if you're not taking care of yourself first. Coming from that place. So they've been huge influences to me.
Just quickly before you sign off, don't forget to visit network.allwellco.com and join our professional network. You'll get to enjoy exclusive benefits from brands we love and have access to a community where learning and professional development are always at the forefront of everything we do.